Happening now. We want to welcome our listeners from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I am the Assistant Director and Curriculum Director at the Montana Digital Academy, the state virtual school located on the University of Montana campus in fabulous Missoula, Montana. And this is episode 53 of the EdTech Situation Room. And joining me, as always, Dr. Wes Fryer. Good evening, Dr. Fryer. How are you this evening?
I am doing wonderful and glad to join you from beautiful Oklahoma City, where I'm the Director of Technology for the Cassidy School, and it is a wonderful night, and I almost just put the headphones on outside, but it would get a little bit dark, but very pleasant spring weather here without severe weather right now, so yay.
Yep, the same here as well. And in fact, we've gone from there was literally snow on the ground here last week to yesterday. It was 78 degrees was the high. So Montana has very diverse weather. So it's one of our strengths and also one of our bewilderments.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I can't apologize for the links, but I think this might set a record for a number of links. We, may end up talking about, less than a fourth of them. Who knows? Now, is that a cat or is that a human being?
That is a cat. So Stash the cat, who kind of has been going in and out of good health, is getting a little more demanding. So I'm sure that if I just, put her up here, then she'll be good to go. So Stash joining us live, as she sometimes does. So
that's
hello,
good.
Stash.
Hey, and your microphone issues seem to have been, completely resolved. So are you now sporting some new hardware, or what's the secret sauce there? Whoa. You froze for a second, but now you're back. Am I okay?
Yeah, you're okay. I wonder if, of course, these are probably my bandwidth issues. It's funny you should mention my microphone and then something else ultimately goes wrong. So, so I think we're just testing karma at this point. So let's go ahead and jump in. Wes, where should we start tonight?
Well, I think we need to go back to Google I/O because last week we talked the most about it. In tonight's show, just to kind of preview, and if we get some live viewers and you want to tell us which ones you'd like to go to, we kind of organized them tonight under the subtopics: genomics, biotech, fake news, critical thinking, AI, more Google I/O, hacking security, the sky is falling, Microsoft and Apple, media, information, and free, this week in space. So, but Google I/O, I had not watched any of the keynote before our show last time, and did watch the keynote, and I've also watched a few other show of the broadcast videos via Apple TV, YouTube, and that channel. And so I just really was inspired, and I guess the first article I'll talk about was from Wired. This was on May 19th, 2017. Google's perfect future will always be just around the corner. And the article is actually a bit of a whine, saying, hey, Google, we need products, not, just all these ideas and these platforms. This is the developer conference, right? This isn't the conference to say, hey, come and buy all our stuff. And so this article, which is by, David Pierce, my main response to it is, yeah, there's a lot of amazing technology here, and what Google is really inviting developers to do is to help them invent the future. So I found myself really inspired, and I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole. The first opening scene of the keynote is a very cool animation, and it's I wrote a blog post. Actually, I used Shazam on my iPhone to figure out who that artist was. And it's really the story of launching your idea and going up the mountain and facing challenges and not being able to make it by yourself and having to collaborate with others, etc. So let's see, Jerry, I think it's Mungo Jerry. I thought they his name. It's like a 1973 song. Never heard of this guy. We're talking about the biggest beard and just 70s do ever, and I've been playing that song all week on my phone and pretty much irritating everyone in my family. So how are you a week after I/O, Jason? Still inspired, and any thoughts reflecting a week after the big announcements?
Well, I think that for me, the most interesting piece of this is and I don't disagree with the article that says that we do need products, but I totally agree with you, Wes, that that's what the developers are for, and what Google has been super great at in the last 10 years in particular is they develop platforms that people build products on top of that turn into wonderfully successful consumer products. Witness, the world's most popular cell phone, the Android cell phone. It's based on their open source operating system that people will gladly agree to restrictions on the open source license to get the Google applications on the phones. And they've been able to, spread them out far and wide. And I'm an Android user. I like my $160 phone I've picked up from Amazon. It's a great buy. It's a great phone. It's a great platform. And so I see the products in regards to that. But the thing that I thought was most interesting is that it's really clear that Google, but I think it's true of Microsoft. I also think it's true of Apple, that we're clearly heading the direction of artificially intelligent devices that are in our lives, whether we're ready for it or not. And they're going to become smarter and smarter and smarter as the devices figure out ways to help us appropriately. And I'll give you a very specific example of this. One of the announcements that was pretty small was that Google was going to roll out automatic answers for emails in their apps. The idea being that you can it needs to be in their mailbox app. That they, the problems articulating, that they used to have it in their mailbox app, which was a separate email or application you could download that reinvented.
Inbox, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And the automatic reply or the AI generated replies was something that was in that particular application. But as it turns out, that's now available in all of Google's Gmail applications. And it's a super interesting concept, but it really didn't mean anything to me until I started opening up emails one morning on my phone, and it started appearing at the bottom. There were 4 or 5 seemingly innocent responses there. And what I've noticed over the last week since that started to occur is not only do those responses sound like me, right? Like they're using phrases and they're using methods that I would use to respond to things. They are almost more often than not like correct, right? Like these would be things that I would say in response to those particular pieces. And that's a very interesting preview on our relatively near future with the Internet of Things and devices starting to wiggle their way into more and more and more and more and more of our lives, that we may be able to help tackle the email problem, but also be more efficient in communication and connection when AI can help us in that way. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't inspire massive numbers of questions and questions of ethics and that sort of thing, but it's a very interesting concept, and I think that simple tool can give you a sense of maybe where we're going here with Google and these sets of tools.
Absolutely, and I would say that dealing with large quantities of email effectively is one of the #1 needs of our administrators at our school. Help with that. That's something I'm about to do a professional development survey to find out what kinds of things folks would like to learn this summer. And our upper division head, who's our high school principal, just had mentioned that to me a week or so ago, that he gets about 80 to 90 emails a day, and just really would love and benefit from strategies and tips and tools that will help him deal with that. So I am fascinated by that. I also think that it raises an issue about the benefits of Google keeping this history. Ben Wilkoff last week recommended this Contra Fabulists podcast, which I actually listened to their latest episode. It's Audrey Waters and Ken Lane, and you can go back to our last episode, episode 52, if you want to get that link in the Geeks of the Week for Ben. And one of the things that Audrey says in that was, she's going in and deleting all her history and deleting all this old email. I went to a session at this Atlas conference about a month ago in Burbank, California, where some schools were talking about their retention policies and liability and student information. And in one case, a school actually is on a rolling delete of all data in email that is over a year old. Well, this kind of thing about Google being able to learn from us and then being able to provide, really helpful responses. Personally, I'm really excited about that. I think as long as Google is continuing to give us the power to be aware of what's being collected and take control over it. I mean, if Audrey and other people want to delete all their old, email and web history and YouTube history, that's okay. But I am learning more now because of recommended videos on YouTube. And it's phenomenal. Like, YouTube knows I'm really interested in AI because I've watched the videos fully and I know it tracks how long you watch them. I like those. I subscribe to the channels. I mean, I am a beneficiary today of AI. So this doesn't scare me. It excites me.
Sure. Absolutely. What else from the Google keynote piqued your interest, Wes?
Well, definitely the Google Assistant, right? And I've downloaded it on my phone, but I really only played with it a little bit, or I tried to, and I don't know if it was trying to get going or whatever, but I've seen some reviews where it's at this point not that much better than Siri, but this is the real early days, right? I mean, launching that app and saying, wow, it sucks, it can't do anything more than Siri. I think, we're at early days, and this also has to do with where we're going to invest, what ecosystem we're going to invest in, and what we're going to be trusting. So right. I am in feed in both worlds sort of thing with my iPhone, MacBook, iPad, but heavily invested in Google on my personal side as far as websites and email and then at school as well. So right. I look forward to here's the EdTech and school connection, right? Because that's what we do on the EdTech Situation Room. Here's these news articles, and what does this mean for schools? We absolutely should be talking to students about artificial intelligence and iterating around what do we do when we have access to these AIs. I mean, what does that mean differently for school? This isn't pie in the sky Jetsons maybe in 100 years. Like, in our lifetimes, if we get to live out to 70 plus, who knows? I've been reading about the Whole Foods diet. Maybe we can go for 100. But if we're living into the next couple decades, we're living in the world of just incredible automation and AI. So I think that we've got to be looking at computer science for everyone in terms of an exposure kind of class. I think we've got to be looking at the ways in which students are developing computational thinking strategies and are going to be adept at using data, at creating algorithms and manipulating things, not necessarily everyone at a Python code level, but certainly at a computational thinking level, because that's what we're going to be able to do with these AIs. And that probably was exciting from the keynote. Google opening up access to some of their artificial intelligence, because you can go now to google.ai, and there's a very compelling story of a high school student who wanted to, I think, improve the MRI scanning for breast cancer. And I mean, this kid on his own learned some incredible stuff and has developed these things, and that he is an outlier, right? That is not going to be 50% of the high school graduating class in, Missoula, Bozeman, Oklahoma City, Edmond, you name the town. But it is stunning. I mean, it is absolutely stunning to think about the access that we have, the way that it's democratized, and the way that literally any student anywhere in the country in the world who has access to the web and these kinds of open tools is going to have a pathway, if they would want to follow it, that can lead to some pretty incredible places. So I would say that AI piece, and the fact that Elon Musk is not alone in calling for the Open AI Alliance, because he says, the scary future world is if only big tech companies and certain countries have access to powerful AIs. We are more protected when more people have access to these AIs to use them for good and not for evil. So I haven't really checked out that website yet, but was certainly energized by that story.
Absolutely.
The other thing, which I'd also just point out, because it's another video I saw, there's a Google I/O video called Past, Present, and Future of AI Machine Learning. And so this was a panel discussion with 4 amazing women, just incredible backgrounds, talking about machine learning and having this historical perspective on how we've gotten to today and where we're going next. And it is mind-blowing, and it's also really, really exciting from the perspective of thinking about diversity in tech and coding, and having these amazing 3 women who've just done phenomenal things and are doing phenomenal things with AI. So I just really commend that video to folks. Have you watched any of the additional videos, Jason, beyond the keynote?
I have not yet. I have several queued up. I will be traveling a lot in the next 2 weeks, and looking forward to some plane fodder with that. But lots of interesting things in it. There were obviously things that Google released that were more PR-y things. There are lots of interesting sessions from the developer part of that conference as well. And so I'm looking forward to looking through some of that stuff. I wanted to note one thing that was covered by a couple pieces of the tech press. Google gave a couple sessions related to their, you'll notice I have a new cat now that's rubbing on my arm. Lily, how you doing, buddy? The session on Android apps on Chromebooks was very interesting. I did listen to about 20 minutes of that, and it was pretty technical, and some of it was a little over my head. But the too long didn't read version of the session was that it's a lot harder than they thought it was going to be to port Android apps over to the Chromebook architecture, which is why right now we have less than a dozen Chromebooks that have actually been cleared for that. And I think only 5 or 6 do it in the stable channel. For the rest of them, you have to put it into the beta channel or developer channel to be able to access the Play Store on there. And I will say that even though I like it and I now own a Chromebook that has that ability, it's still pretty wonky and it crashes a lot. And some of the apps look absolutely terrible. And in fact, that's one of the things they said about the challenge of porting over Android apps to the Chromebook architecture is that the developers of a lot of Chrome apps made sloppy mistakes early on in developing that they haven't gone in and cleaned, which means that when they move towards a tablet-sized screen or a larger screen, or they add a keyboard or mouse, which should be fairly effortless based on what Google would say are their standards for developing Android apps, a lot of developers have not done that. Now, a lot of developers have. For example, you have to hack your Chromebook to do this. And I did it once and then immediately wiped it because it was too unstable. But the PowerPoint and Word apps, Android apps, look absolutely beautiful on a Chromebook. And in fact, I would say it's as close as I've seen to a functional alternative to the desktop versions of those applications. I love how Word and PowerPoint look on the iPad, how they look on a phone. I think Microsoft's done a lot of great work there to try to make those more universal applications. They look really great on Chromebooks, but they have not allowed that. So you have to hack your Chromebook to get it put on there. But it's a really interesting phenomenon. So that's the other thing that I did dig a little into and found some interesting insights from Google I/O.
Well, we spent kind of all the time last time on Google, and we've got a bunch of other things to talk about, but I'm going to do kind of some shout outs to a few other videos. There's a new one, Watch Boston Dynamics Dog-Like Robot Do Party Tricks, and this is from May 19th from Tech Insider. And then the one that I saw back in February, which is also Boston Dynamics, a Google-owned robotics company, is called Introducing Handle. And one of my favorite things teaching STEM in 2013 to 2015 was sharing curiosity links with kids to just spark their innovation or their curiosity, really, and just their interest. And wow, these are definitely videos that fit into that category. The other video, and I put this under the category of AI. I watched this last night. DeepMind CEO, artificial intelligence invents new knowledge and teaches new human theories. This was amazing, and this is by the CEO of DeepMind. And I think this is the one that was talking about Go. Let me open it and check. But we had, like 20 years ago, we've had the anniversary of IBM's Deep Blue defeat of Garry Kasparov, I think I'm saying that right, who was a worldwide chess champion, and that he was defeated by a computer. And so this presentation is unbelievable. I had a friend a couple years ahead of me in college who loved the game Go. And I didn't know there are 2,000 people worldwide who are professional Go players and make their full-time living playing Go. Go is way bigger than chess. And like when this happened, well, it wasn't Deep Blue. Do you remember what the name of AlphaGo was the name of the computer that Google made, that DeepMind made to beat this top player? Almost everyone in South Korea was watching this. I don't know about North Korea. Their TV and their internet is obviously different there, but like millions of people were watching this. And in Asia, the buzz and the thing, this is one of the most interesting videos I've seen in a long time, because it explains how AlphaGo was intuiting and being creative in the ways that it was responding, because Go is a much less analytical, you can chart out all your moves. I mean, there are like more move possibilities than atoms in the universe or something. I mean, it's mathematics that I just don't understand. But this is a phenomenal video, and they have also, it has gone to school on itself, and the ways that it's been iterating and learning, and this is machine learning, right, is just, it's staggering. So loved that video. And I think you put the Recode article about the Google parent company Alphabet has made the most AI acquisitions. Any commentary on that and why that's significant?
Yeah, I think that, that there, obviously when Google announces anything, there's hand wringing and there's, a lot of excitement around it. So both sides of the coin are covered there. But, Google does speak a lot by what they're buying. I mean, Alphabet is famous for buying companies both for their technology and also for engineers. And if they are picking up a lot of expertise or patents or processes that are related to AI, expect that to become part of their game much more aggressively in the relatively near future. And, I would say that of all the big players, Google's more likely to pull it off in addition to, or I'm sorry, as opposed to just about anyone else. So if you're really looking at what the future of this looks like, I think a lot of the stuff that's announced to Google I/O is a good preview of that.
And it hinges on data, right? This is something that comes through in these videos over and over again, is that part of why we're seeing such movement in machine learning and AI is because we have these platforms that are able to pour all of this information and data into these systems, which can analyze. And that's really, what drives that more than anything else. So I put one more Google article that I'll mention, and this was one I think we've had in the notes for a couple weeks, and I just kept it in because I wanted to make sure we mentioned it. It's from VentureBeat on May the 8th. NVIDIA Metropolis Video Analytics paves the way for AI cities. And there's some statistics in this article that are just staggering about the amount of content that is being created with video every day. The estimate, it says by 2020, the cumulative number of cameras is expected to rise to approximately 1 billion. Video is the world's largest generator of data, captured by hundreds of millions of cameras deployed in areas such as government property, public transit, etc. I did just finish finally watching season 1 of Mr. Robot, which is rated M for mature, and is the one to watch with the kids. But boy, does that make you think about hacking, and not just going to the Black Hat conference and making sure your device is turned off, but what people all over the place could be, doing in terms of sniffing with devices and grabbing stuff. So, we've talked about this before, and there was the video last week from Microsoft talking about the workplace and this, AI capability of being able to see what you're doing and map, perhaps this was dangerous in the hospital room, and, Joe needs to be sitting down and not walking in the hallway. Or he, the medication part, there's some real positives there. But again, what are we doing in school with video? I love to say video is the pencil of the 21st century. And I really believe that. I think video has as much relevance or more than text in terms of educating people today and in terms of just communicating. And so I think this is a very important shift in school, is that we should be not just saying to a few kids who take an elective, oh, you're the ones that will do digital media. Again, I think everybody needs to have creative digital media experiences, both from the critical thinking standpoint that happens when you create the media versus just consume it, as well as just the practical of this is how more and more communication is happening today for video. Are you guys, by the way, offering any video courses with the Montana Digital Academy, or what? Where does media fit in with what you guys do?
We do not, only because of the struggle of trying to find, the right equipment and websites that districts that we are serving support. That's been our largest challenge there. Like if we were completely outside of a school infrastructure and kids were bringing their own devices, it'd be pretty easy to do. But because we're somewhat beholden to that, same thing is true about things like web design and image manipulation, Photoshop, any of those sort of things, publishing sort of stuff. We've run into that challenge. But the bottom line is that, that I couldn't agree more. That is a critical part of communication. And, the fact that you can, going back to my $150 phone, like this is a video production unit, right? So it absolutely has the capability of, engaging in those activities. And, it also, when we don't talk about or come to terms with these issues, we also lose out on a lot of the ethical questions of these sorts of things, and the ability to talk about when it's appropriate to record something and when it's not appropriate to record something. And I think those are all lessons that are not taught when we don't spend time inviting these processes into our classrooms and helping students through those somewhat challenging questions.
We do have a request for you from the chat room. Peggy George is wondering if you might comment about the Montana politics hitting the national news tonight. We won't have to. We don't have to do a deep dive there, but we do want to let everyone know, if you're watching live on the YouTube, there is a chat on the side. It's a pop-out chat, and so generally we're able to now view that along with the stream. And of course, we haven't said this episode, but you can access all the links and the many that we will not talk about tonight on edtechsr.com/links. So Jason, Montana is front and center. When will you be running for the representative in Montana? Not this one tomorrow, but
right. Maybe try to announce. So I should say I do have some history. I'm in the Wikipedia for this. I have run for lieutenant governor before in the state of Montana, so I do have some history of getting my butt kicked in elections here. But the breaking news out of Montana tonight is that there's a special election tomorrow. It's kind of weird on a Thursday, but that's the way the calendar shook out. But we have just one seat in the House of Representatives. We have an at-large seat in Montana, largest geographical area covered by a single seat. And my cat is really interested in being close to me tonight. And it was previously held by Ryan Zinke, who won re-election in November by a fairly wide margin over our former state superintendent of public instruction. And then he was tapped by the Trump administration to become the Secretary of Interior. So he was confirmed, and the minute that happened, our governor called for a special election. And it's been a really interesting 90 days because we didn't hold primaries. Instead, the political parties named their candidates. On the Republican side, Greg Gianforte, a former software engineer that is a multi-millionaire that lives in Bozeman, Montana. And I believe that he sold his software company to Oracle, or was it Boeing? Maybe it's Oracle, but he obviously profited greatly from that. And he was challenged our governor in November and lost the governor's race. And so he threw his hat in the ring, was picked by the Montana Republican Party. And then the Democrats had several pretty good candidates. They ended up picking a newcomer, a man by the name of Rob Quist, who's a folk singer and kind of country rock singer. Won that, and it was an election by party folks. They had a convention that they went and picked the candidate. It's been an extraordinary election. Gianforte based on, where Montana fell electorally in November, should have had a significant advantage. Polls have been tightening fairly dramatically in the last several weeks. Senator Sanders from Vermont made a stop in Montana on Saturday and Sunday to stump for Mr. Quist. And then tonight's breaking news is that a London-based reporter for the Guardian newspaper was apparently body slammed by Mr. Gianforte after he had asked, the reporter had asked him some questions about the release of the congressional estimates related to the cost of Trump care that were released earlier today. And there is video of this. Mr. Gianforte is a trending topic on Twitter right now. He's also a trending topic on YouTube. And you can hear that audio, which has been posted to YouTube. The Gianforte campaign claims that the reporter was super aggressive and Mr. Gianforte was just defending himself. But it's interesting the night before an election. So right now, apparently, there's a press conference going on in Bozeman, Montana, by the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office. The reporter was taken to the hospital, is currently being treated. So yeah, it's a little wacky.
And the election is tomorrow.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we again aren't going to just totally dive politics, but I thought it was interesting with the recent election in France and their presidential election, how they have a blackout time where there's not supposed to be, communication. And so like right before that blackout time was when some of these supposed hacked, mail messages from one of the candidate that was defeated. No, it was from the candidate that won. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. And I'll just say on an Oklahoma note, we've got our legislature meeting for the last week. They are required by the Constitution we have a $900 million deficit right now in our budget, and they are required to submit revenue raising initiatives 5 days before the end of the session. The end of the session is Friday. And so the budget literally last night was given to the House members at 11:30 p.m. They had 30 minutes to vote on it. It didn't even have spreadsheets and these summary things. And it is so not representative democracy done well. It's incredible. And so I would just love to see us do a better job with our own democracy and our own, exercise of democratic rights. There's all kinds of things happening around the world with all of this, but, bring that back from a school perspective, not just a school. We all need to be involved and take our responsibilities, not only as voters, but as citizens very seriously and be involved in the process, because technology can make things move really quickly. And it's we need smart, moral people to be leading us at all levels, right? State and national levels. So
yeah, that's what's going on in Montana tonight. So I've been kind of keeping a half eye on my social media feeds, and Twitter's gone abuzz, and some national politicians have been jumping in now. And it's this election was already kind of a spectacle, and now that's confirmed.
All right. Well, hey, what topic would you like to do next, Jason? I know I put a ton in, but you want to?
Let's go. Let's do the fake news topic, because I think both you and I had dumped a link in here, and there's actually another link that's related to this. So maybe I want to pick up on as the post topic. But interesting things of fake news, and this is an article I put in a couple of weeks ago from Lifehacker Vitals, which is the health blog from Lifehacker, and basically, there is a pregnancy bot, and I don't exactly understand how it works, but I think it's a Twitter-based bot that is the Can I Eat This bot, which the Can I Eat This is a fairly popular web presence related to nutrition. But the interesting thing about that is that a reporter from Lifehacker asked the pregnancy bot, the Can I Eat This bot for a number of things related to pregnancy nutrition. As it turns out, many of the things cited by the bot were just flatly wrong. Like they had no basis in science, or they were extremely commonly dispelled myths that it was easy to find some countering research. And For me, this it kind of plugs into an important thing related to digital personal assistants and Siri and Google now and Cortana. And the bottom line is that at least for the time being, a good Google search is probably going to be better than something that tries to give you a single channel answer to something when it comes to things that are either factually based, that have some import to them, like a question related to health, or secondarily something that could be subject to opinion. Whereas if you're getting a single answer from whatever the source is, a bot, an intelligent personal assistant, etc., that does have some potentially perilous implications to it. And so I was really interested in that topic and thought it is something worth thinking about and talking about. So I guess I'd start here, Wes. Would you trust a bot with critical medical questions?
Absolutely not. And that article goes on to say several interesting things. Number one, they did not consult with health or medical professionals in the creation of this bot.
Yep.
The person who is the spokeswoman or spokesperson, said that we're a technology company, not a health medical company. And what they were really wanting to do was get a splash out there to show their potential to create a bot, not necessarily to create something that was going to provide accurate information. And since that article was published on May 12th, there's a little update at the bottom that the bot has been taken offline and now has a message of we're updating our databases. So I think that it's important for technology companies to step up to the ethics of what they're doing. Mark Zuckerberg was famously quoted as saying Facebook was not a media company in the election, and really trying to disavow initially the influence that they had upon the election result. And so I think the same kind of thing was happening here with this company, where they're saying we're a technology company, and it's like, but you're giving health information, therefore you need to take some responsibility for the accuracy of it. And we certainly need to, again, recognize it's very early days for all of this. And so I think most of the things hitting the news about bots are sort of bots gone bad. There was the Microsoft one that really quickly the bot learned to cuss and insult people. Yeah. So I haven't really seen a big headline about, awesome bot answers all my technical, questions when I'm troubleshooting my Mac. I mean, that has not happened yet.
Right. And then the other article, which I think that you had posted, Wes, was about a DNC staffer's murder illustrates how conspiracy theories ultimately spread fake news. Do you want to talk about that one for a bit?
You bet. So, one of the questions that we've been talking about for years with information literacy, digital literacy, is this whole idea about how are you, vetting information and identifying a reliable source. And so this was a report from May 22nd by NPR talking about how Newt Gingrich, who we would think as a mainstream, like he was the former Speaker of the House, right, was repeating stuff about this death of a Democratic National Committee staff murder. And, because he was repeating things that were found in very questionable, Breitbart, Rush Limbaugh. I know that probably offends a lot of people who love Rush, but he gave it some sort of mainstream stamp of approval. But this is a real outlier theory about how the Russians were involved in his killing, and basically the report says it's one of many unsolved murders in Washington. And who knows what the connections are here, but. What is the advice that we give students and teachers today, Jason, about how you validate information and what to believe online?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that looking at multiple sources and not believing fantastic stories, all these are part of developing important strategies related to this. And the other thing that the reason why I really want to talk about these two topics tonight is I've posted another article in that is a podcast I've listened to about a third of that I want to share tonight, but also talk about the grander topic. There's a really wonderful a case story of someone that's figured out a way to charge for good media. And there's a really wonderful tech website called The Information, and there is a great thing in Recode with an interview with Jessica Lesson, who is the editor and owner of The Information. And it's a website that charges $400 a year for very long form and deeply researched technology journalism. And the way you know it's made a difference is because when you listen to technology news and podcasts, they're referring to this source all the time. And $400 would be expensive for any media purchase at all. Actually, if you think about, paying for Netflix, you don't pay $400 a year. If you buy the New York Times online, even to get the print edition, I don't think it's $400 a year. So it is a premium price. But I think that there is a larger triangulation about the fact that we don't pay for media anymore, and fake news is proliferating, and social media is sharing fake news at an alarmingly high rate, where real news or factually based news tends to struggle a little more when it can't utilize clickbait style headlines, and the fact that we don't pay for news really anymore. And that's become a free commodity that is available to us and is processed. And there's something there. I'm not quite sure what it is, but at some point we have to find a way to evolve and create the revolution that gets us back paying for media again, get paying for journalism, paying for writing, and paying for those things. There's been lots of really wonderful attempts at that. There's obviously micropayments through efforts like Patreon that allow creators, podcasters, writers, artists to gain patrons for their work. But the bottom line is that I think this all kind of fits in within itself, that just paying for something doesn't add credibility to it. But if you're paying for something, you've probably vetted it before you've done that, and you can then trust the source. So that's something that is maybe not a fully complete, fully baked thought, but it's what I've been thinking about in regards to we have a real problem with that. And I have a classroom application related curriculum that's a side note to that I'll wait for a moment. So Wes, any thoughts about paying for media, and if that involves or is involved in this discussion at all?
Absolutely. I've had a Twitter interaction with one of our local reporters in the last 2 weeks, because again, we were having the end of our session, and we're having mainstream media as well as bloggers cover things. And our one of our main news outlets for Oklahoma City is the Daily Oklahoman, and newsok.com is their website. And they have a paywall. And so some of their content is available openly, but a sizable amount of it is behind the paywall. And it's not a ton of money to subscribe, but like probably most people, I'm pretty selective in terms of what I'm going to pay for. And so I had made the comment that, our state deserved this article that was about the, education budget and things to be openly published and not to be behind a paywall. And that media outlet, I mean, there are millions of people that, read this and see all this. And so I had put out the Guardian as an example, where they're asking for contributions, but they're not putting all their content behind a paywall. And their reply to that was, they've been losing money for years. They have a wealthy benefactor, and so they're not a good example. I did make a donation to the Guardian this last week, thinking about this in part, and I am excited. I am glad to support journalism, and so I'm not categorically opposed. But especially when you have a news outlet like this, the Daily Oklahoman, which is in Oklahoma City, we have the Tulsa World, which is pretty much the biggest one in Tulsa. These are our two biggest cities. And then the Daily Oklahoman. There's some real obligation, I think, they have to the public, not just to, be publishing behind a paywall. So I think it's interesting that this website, The Information, is making a go of this. I mentioned before, I think it's interesting to see what's happening with Patreon and the idea of micropayments. Something that Jason and I will, I'm sure, talk about offline some more, and may at some point do is look at, do we want to go down that road of doing some kind of advertisement support? And, it's not like I think any of us are going to quit our day jobs for the podcast, but these are all important topics, and they certainly are important from the aspect of democracy and politics. I was watching the Washington Post. That's where I saw the article, the video about the Montana election. And I think their byline is "Democracy dies in darkness," basically saying we've got to have the light of media shining, in our communities to prevent, darkness from winning the day. So I think these are hugely important issues, and hopefully we will continue to see innovation and, good journalism, because it's vital. I do love to blog. I love to podcast, but it's not my full-time job. And I'm just thrilled that we have people whose full-time job is to go out there and write the stories that wouldn't be out in the public and in the mainstream media, part of our conversations without them.
Yep, absolutely. And then I thought of one other link to this broader discussion too, that's related to the internet as a curriculum device, right? And one of the things that I think that we're going to have to probably come to terms with sooner rather than later is the fact that free internet resources aren't all what they cracked up to be. But at some point, we need to find a middle ground between ridiculously overpriced textbook manufacturer created digital resources, and then on the other end of that, the free internet, which is both advertising supported, which I think it does introduce some interesting ethical questions into the classroom, and secondarily is killing journalism, right? Like the notion that news is supposed to be free is hurting our journalism industry in the United States. And so there's a middle ground there that I'm not sure if I'm smart enough to figure out, but those are discussions I think we're going to be having in the coming days and weeks, months, and years. About where are we finding stuff? Like what are we able to do? Can we let kids out to the free internet to research the difference between that, commercial databases and commercially available tools, yada, yada, yada. And I think there's a larger question here we're going to have to come to terms with, probably not within the half an hour we have, or the hour we do a week in the podcast.
There's the sound of the new cat. So how many cats do you guys have?
Just two cats and a dog.
Okay, very good. Well, I want to get to the top of the links, because this is one I've kept in the show notes for several weeks and haven't mentioned. And this is under the topic of genomics and biotech. And both of these articles are pretty amazing. The TechCrunch article from May 3rd says scientists have eliminated HIV in mice using CRISPR. And if you are not familiar with CRISPR, there's really some great Radiolab podcasts that you can go back to. They revisited this in the last couple months. CRISPR is this technology that allows geneticists and medical professionals to go into DNA and to snip out parts that are problematic. And then I'm going to sound like I know what I'm talking about. I've just listened to Radiolab podcasts, and I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express in the last month. It allows for the DNA sequence that they want to basically be in the same area, and then enzymes and stuff put it together and fix it. And so there's really tremendous hope for Parkinson's and for all these different kinds of things to be cured. Well, this is astounding to think that they've eliminated HIV, in mice using this kind of technology. And this also has the Frankenstein element, right? When is Jurassic Park coming for real? And we're going to have hybrid, cats and dogs, and who knows what's going to happen. But that is mind-blowing. And then this article, which I have never heard of this source before, but this is attributed on the DARPA website, so I got another link to this too. This is from Mike, M-I-C, on May 1st, 2017. The military wants to hack your brain to make it easier for you to learn languages. I have a little bit of insight into this because actually one of my former debate partners, one of the smartest people I've ever known, who has a dual doctorate in philosophy and cognitive neuroscience and worked for DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, as his last assignment in active duty. He works for Lockheed now. He was a project manager, and what the project managers do is they have millions of dollars and they have different initiatives, and so they'll put this money out and have people bid for it. And I forget what they're called. They're not called competitors, but anyway, let me read this. The DARPA has doled out more than $50 million to to fund research that could potentially hack your brain to facilitate learning. The new program, called Targeted Neuroplasticity Training, will explore electrical stimulation of the nervous system to find safe ways to make learning languages easier. And it goes on to say that when they stimulate not only parts of the brain, but parts of your spinal cord and other parts of your body, they think that it can increase the neuroplasticity of your brain and your actual ability to memorize and learn and retain information. I mean, this makes me kind of think of like psych wards where they're doing electroshock therapy, but this is, supported research that's happening in research institutions now in the country. And they're looking, the people that are working for these project managers are called performers. And so they're looking for their performers to, have an improvement of 30% in language learning. Language learning is really important to the military. I've had multiple friends, go up to Monterey, California, where they've got this amazing language institute. And, we had strategic languages at the Air Force Academy. I was a Spanish guy. That's not a strategic language, but strategic languages are Arabic, are Russian, the Pakistani language of Urdu. A friend here at Oklahoma City that signed up and enlisted, went off to Monterey and got trained in all that and has done signals intelligence stuff, listening in on Urdu. So anyway, the military is very interested in this. From a school standpoint, this is pretty big too, right? How do we improve learning? So this to me is like science fiction, but it's happening today. And I've mentioned before the book that talks about DARPA. It's called The Pentagon's Brain. And let me see if I can pull her name out really quick. She says in the book, Annie Jacobson is the author, that DARPA is about 10 to 20 years ahead of where we are as consumers. So this is an example of it. We're not going to see this in schools tomorrow, but wow, it just blows my mind. So Jason, are you ready to sign up for electrical stimulation of your neurological, body to make you speak Swedish in 2 weeks so you'll be totally, fluent and ready for the trip?
I'm ready. Sign me up. So I happily would take the cartridge, Swedish cartridge, to my brain to speak the language. And honestly, I don't think we could prepare for this in schools because it's just so radical that, and we certainly want to sit around thinking, man, I don't need algebra now. I'll just plug in the algebra cartridge and be good to go. But the bottom line is that, this changes pretty much everything. So,
we need to educate folks to be ready for flexible careers, and again, to bring in the ethics side, to have character education and ethics. So I'm not positive. Well, I don't know when this will happen, but I think I'm going to formally ask at our school if at some point I can help with a STEM ethics portion of one of our computer science classes. We're talking about doing some intersession classes, and we change our schedule hopefully in the next year or so. But how do you prepare for this? Well, it's hopefully by, helping students be able to adjust and able to, make good choices and have ethics part of their framework as they look at what they're going to do with these incredible tools. Because between CRISPR and things like this DARPA project, I don't know, that is something that fits kind of more into Ian Jukes might have shared that, 10 or 20 years ago, or however long he's been on the circuit, the future is going to blow your mind. I think that kind of, it fits into that category. It's probably not immediately useful, but it would certainly make a good writing prompt. We can say that. So
yep, absolutely.
Looking for a new writing prompt to finish up the year.
Well, is there a quick one we could do, Wes?
Really quick, let's talk about Microsoft and Apple. Microsoft has unveiled the new Surface Pro. Apple Insider, May 22nd. I just watched a video about it. Looks very Apple-like in terms of its marketing. It still runs Windows, so that's not personally exciting to me. But Apple is rumored to be updating their MacBooks at WWDC. That's coming up here, I think, June 6th through the 9th. Possible MacBook Air and Pro refreshes. Did you do the Verge article about the big bet on the Surface family?
I did, as a matter of fact. And it's really interesting to me that Microsoft did did apparently try to push out all of their product lines before Apple was able to introduce anything new. And the reason why this is interesting to me from a school standpoint is I do feel like the Surface laptops that are coming out, the ones that run Windows 10s, they might be available early enough to make some purchasing cycles for schools this coming fall. I can't imagine that there will be wide adoption of Surface 10s devices quite yet, because I think that the platform needs to be tested and proven before it works in that direction. But I think it does kind of help highlight that Apple is just not evolving the way they used to. And maybe it's because Microsoft had more to catch up on, which I do think is true, that I think from a device standpoint, they're new to the device game, and the first couple of releases weren't super great. And so it took them a while to evolve and innovate in that space, and they're getting to find their stride. But I don't think Apple's dead. They're still selling a lot of iPhones. I think the iPad's a challenged platform, and I think the laptop desktop space is also substantially challenged.
I have to jump in here with a video link that Peggy shared, and I watched it right before our show. It's titled "Interview with Angela Arentz." I may not be saying her name right. She's Senior VP of Apple Retail. Last time we mentioned that Apple, or maybe it was 2 shows ago, Apple is looking at having Teacher Tuesdays and making their Apple retail stores like places to hang out. And this 11-minute video from LinkedIn really goes in depth with that, like how, I forget how they term it, but it's like Armageddon thinking in malls, because people are buying on Amazon, right? They're not going to the mall. And her statement in that is, they used to think in a mall you needed 20% experience, 80% buying. Well, now maybe you need 80% experience, 20% buying. And so they've got, I think, 4 different strands. And it's interesting talking about how she mentioned Steve Jobs and this idea of wedding the liberal arts and creativity to technology, but it really is a reimagining of what an experience at an Apple store might be like. And so I think that we are seeing, this is happening in mid-May, that they're going to roll out in 400 stores, this whole new software and this whole new focus. And it makes me want to go down and say, hey, are you going to have outside folks, teach some things or share some things? Because I'm hoping it's not just going to be about here's how to make a spreadsheet in Apple Sheets or whatever it's called, numbers. I hope that it'll be like people in the community who are using powerful tools on Mac platforms and being able to share that kind of stuff too. So don't count out Apple, and definitely it'll be exciting to see how AI, their rumored new assistant for the home speaker product, is going to fit into this, and how they may, have been slow to jump into some of that and probably have gone to school on what other people have done and, try to do it better. So I'm not giving up on Apple by any means.
And, I guess for me, the thing that is super interesting, and I would say now I'm 20% Mac, 60% Windows, and 20% Chrome OS as I move around my various devices throughout the day. And I like to be able to support all those devices too, which is part of the reason why I do that. But, the bottom line is that they all exist, and schools will need to acknowledge and support them all, especially if you're in a BYOD environment. But the other key question for me is how hard is are these 3 platforms working to make sure that good, useful technology is in kids' hands? And I'm hoping that however the battle royale between Microsoft and Apple ends up in more devices being available for kids. And it feels like both of them are mostly headed in that direction.
Absolutely. Well, we probably covered half of the articles.
Yeah. Well, just think of it this way: we already have a start on a future episode. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll just be moving these hacking, security, and the sky is falling. So I didn't wear my tinfoil hat tonight. So
we need to get a set of those for the podcast. So
I'm gonna see if I can get one. All right. Well, do you want to do some Geeks of the Week?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll go quick. This one is a fun app called Burstio for iOS, and one of the cool things that I've done on my iPhone for fast moving action is just held down the button, and that shoots a ton. It's like having a motor drive on your old SLR camera. I think in the day, the Nikon F3 could shoot like 6 frames a second or something like that. And you'd see pictures at 200th or 4,000th with the hummingbirds, wings, or the balloon being burst by the dart or whatever. That's also saying shutter speed, but it takes a lot of pictures. But what do you do with that? So Burstio is not free. I think it's like $3. But we went to the air show this weekend on Saturday, saw the Air Force Thunderbirds perform, very cool and exciting, and actually managed to take a selfie with my daughter with the Thunderbirds behind, which was fun. But they did a pretty, obviously amazing, close passes by the crowd, and so they were doing these knife edge passes, and so I held down the button and shot all this. And Burstio makes an animated GIF, so it takes about, in this case, 25 different separate images, and then makes that into a little animated GIF, which I guess you can't really save to your photo roll because the photo roll on iOS doesn't support animated GIFs, but you can share it to Facebook, share it to Twitter, and that's kind of cool. So that's my app of the week.
And then I like to share, I've kind of turned into shopping guy on on our podcast, but one of the tips that I've used, if you go to Amazon and look for something like a micro SD cable or a lightning cable to charge your Apple products, one of the things that's a big challenge of that is that obviously Amazon has reviews, and that's great, right? It can help find duds from non-duds. But if you're buying particularly electronic equipment, cables, accessories from Amazon, and you're just getting the cheapest one and not minding whether or not it's a legitimate product or well-made, you can really get in trouble. And one of the things that I've used for that, especially when I'm helping other people purchase items that don't want to go through and do the research, is something called Amazon Basics products. And Amazon has a group of branded items to tons of electronic accessories, cables, chargers, that sort of thing that you can pick up from Amazon, well under the super name brand products. And to give you an example of that, you've probably seen there's a lot of these kind of gray felt laptop sleeves that are available on Amazon. I've been working on what I will be carrying with me to Sweden as part of my luggage, and these happen to be on super duper sale. This one was $199, discounted from $19.99, and so they're probably trying to clear out a product before they got a new edition in. But it's wonderful. They are branded Amazon, which I don't particularly care about, and I've recommended cables to family when they're looking for extra chargers or extra lightning cables, for example, to charge iPhones or iPads. And I don't worry about it when I send links to the Amazon Basic products because, they do take brand recognition and sense of value very seriously. So Amazon Basics products is a link in the show notes tonight. And it's what I particularly recommend to family members that are looking for where to buy cheap cables and such.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yes, you are the shopping guy. So rumor has it you may be out for a little bit, but we're going to try to have some guests on the show. Thank you to Marta as well as Peggy for joining us live. Marta in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, making the international in the EdTech Situation Room be a reality. Although we're sure there's some other folks out there listening as well. We're up to about 450 daily hits, I guess, from Amazon statistics on our podcast. So we would love to hear from you if you want to reach out to us on Twitter at edtechsr.com. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Are we done?
No, we can do the outros too. I'm sorry.
It sounds so final. Well, hey, this is the EdTech Situation Room podcast where we had an awkward pause tonight, and you can find us here on Wednesday nights at 9:00 Central, 8:00 Mountain Time. We love it when people join us live. The chat room is a great part of our presence and interaction with folks that listen to the podcast. Of course, you can find us on all the podcast apps, wherever finer podcasts are aggregated, which includes Stitcher. In fact, I have yet to find a podcast app that doesn't contain EdTech SR of the 4 or 5 of them that I've utilized. And so we're in a database somewhere, so you can find us there. Or you can go to our website, edtechsr.com, where you can find the latest episodes, links to the YouTube videos, and of course, every link we feature on the show. So my name is Jason Neiffer. I am the Assistant Director and Curriculum Director of the Montana Digital Academy in fabulous Missoula, Montana. I also blog at the NCCE Tech Savvy Teacher blog.ncce.org. You can find me online on the Twitters at Tech Savvy Teach. And Wes, why don't you bring us out?
So I am Wes Fryer, W Fryer on Twitter. I am on Mastodon, so you can find me there if you go to about.me/W Fryer. And my blog, speedofcreativity.org, will be a little busier as we gear up for the summer. Looking forward to attending the ISTE conference, and I will also be helping co-facilitate an iPad Media Camp in Jackson Hole, Wyoming at the end of June with my wife. And so iPadMediaCamp.com, on Twitter, iPad Media Camp. We'll be having some good updates as we work on some badge-based iPad skills that we're going to be doing for this summer. And I also would like to give a shout out to Stephen Hurley. Stephen Hurley has a wonderful podcast network up in Canada and has graciously been rebroadcasting our EdTech SR shows there. And I think he may be caught up. So it was happening a little bit more recently, and I think he might have caught up. But thank you all so much for tuning in, and reach out to us. Let us know if there's a topic you'd like us to cover. And we want to encourage everyone out there to use a password manager and share EdTech SR, because both of those are great things that will just, the ripple effects will just keep going and going in your life if you'll do those things.
And good night.